is tough because of just the nature of poetry. You know, there's so much packed into words and connections and references to other things. And that is really tough to bring across to another language. And I'm not talking about just let's make it rhyme, okay, but just capturing the full richness of the sense is so tough. So if you have, you know, I have a little short poem and I'm going to teach you about it, or you have, you know, a pastor up in the pulpit and he's going to preach on this, he can unpack all that stuff and he can say, okay, look at this connection to this and look at whatever, and he's got half an hour or whatever his church gives him, okay, to talk about what's in this text. But if you're translating, you've got this much space on a page, and you've got to make choices of words that do the best you can, but you just can't do it all. So I think for that reason, the church needs to have leaders that can work with the original languages and bring all that out to feed the flock. That's first reason. Also, somebody can know just enough Greek and Hebrew to kind of be dangerous. Okay, that is true of many things. You can know just enough of whatever to be dangerous. You know, chemistry, if it comes to mind, or cooking. But anyway, so, you know, sometimes you will hear a TV preacher or somebody in the pulpit of a church you're visiting or whatever, who will, you know, say, well, now the Hebrew says, and then off they go. And sometimes where they go off to is actually unsound, you know. And if I'm sitting in the pew and I'm listening to somebody teach on, you know, whatever the point is, I can listen and I can say, boy, that doesn't sound quite right to me. Okay, and I can go and I can check other scriptures and say, that doesn't seem to me to line up with this other thing over here. You know, and the Bereans were commended for checking out what Paul said, going back to the scriptures and saying, okay, does this line up? And Paul said that is a worthy thing that they were doing, and that's what people in the pew ought to be doing. We should listen with ears that test things for, is this sound or not? But if somebody is saying, well, the Hebrew says, whatever, I have no tools to fight that with. I can't critique. Maybe the Hebrew says that, maybe the Hebrew doesn't. Okay, but if I don't know Hebrew, I have no way to evaluate what's being said. So again, not every Christian sitting in the pew needs to know Hebrew, but somebody needs to know Hebrew. And it seems to me the church leaders need to know Hebrew so that they can go back and say, well, I can sort of see where they're getting that, but actually that's not sound, you know, and they can explain it to the people sitting in the pews. So I think it's part of a protection for the flock too, actually, for the leaders to be familiar with the Hebrew and the Greek and be able to evaluate things that people in the pew are hearing. Maybe somebody will say, you know, I watched this show last night and here's what they said. Okay, and the pastor can sit down and say, well, here's why they're saying such and such. They're going from this to this and this, but actually this step in the middle is faulty, okay? And don't worry about that. It's okay. Here's where they're coming from, but here's a better way to think about that. So really, I think it's part of an oversight of the flock. It's a protective measure for people in leadership to be able to work with the Greek and Hebrew and say, okay, let me help you think about this. So that's the second reason. Okay, third reason. This is, this is sort of fantasy a little bit. Pretend you come to seminary, okay? And you are trying to, pay the bills and you pay the tuition and medical insurance and all that sort of stuff. And you get this letter, okay, from somebody somewhere in the world, some little country, someplace, little rich country someplace, okay? And the ruler of that country says, dear so-and-so, I have selected you and I want to sponsor you. So don't worry about your bills. I'm going to pay your tuition. I'm going to pay your rent and your utilities and your grocery bill, and I'll provide medical insurance, and just don't worry about it. It's like, wow, that's pretty nice. That's great. Okay, and then you say, I accept, thank you very much, sign the dotted line. Okay, and then every week you get a letter from this ruler, whoever he is, okay, just telling you a little bit more about himself, about his country, about what's on his heart. And the more you read these things, you think, oh my word, this person is incredible. Now, the part I left out of this story is that he is writing you in some obscure language that you can't read. Okay, and you're like, I gotta find out what this is about. This guy's paying all my bills. I'm gonna check this out. So you hunt around and you finally discover somebody who's from that country and speaks that language. And every week when you get your letter, you take the letter to whoever this is, and they say, oh yes, I will read this to you. And so they read you the letter, and you can get the gist of what the ruler is communicating to you, okay? But you can tell from the way this person is reading and translating that there's more there. Not that he's trying to hide something, but just that, it's like, oh, you don't understand what this means. In my country, whatever, when a person says this is what it means. Okay. Okay. Or just, you can, oh, this is so beautifully written, whatever. Okay. And the more you find out about this person sponsoring you, you're like, oh my goodness, do you know in his country there is no poverty? None. Nothing. Everybody shares. It's amazing. And you ought to hear this, what this ruler says about he is so concerned for the people in his society that are hurting or that are sick or children that are orphans or whatever. And listen to what he did for them. Okay. And you get to know more and more about this person, and you're just blown away by who this person is. And every week you take your letters to the person from wherever it is, and they translate for you. But it seems to me, if I were in that situation, sooner or later, I would want to say, forget this. Teach me how to read this stuff, okay? I want to read these letters. I want to get all the connotations and the richness and everything else. So that's, maybe that's a less concrete reason to learn Hebrew, but, the Lord has given us a great, big, wonderful letter, 4/5 of which is in Hebrew, okay? And the other 1/5 of which is in Greek, not in English, any of it. So I think that's just an additional reason. It's something I love about reading the Hebrew is to just say, at the beginning of class we sing usually the first verse or two of Psalm 121. I lift up my eyes to the hills. And it's just so neat to me to sing with the class and, to say, my help is from the Lord who made heaven and earth. And I'm saying that in the words that somebody wrote, thousands of years ago, who also knew the maker of heaven and earth. And it's just, I don't know, that may not turn you on, okay? If you like chemistry and calculus and all that sort of stuff, that may not push your buttons at all. But for me, that is really exciting to think that I can get in there and explore the riches and the depths of these letters that the Lord has sent us. So we'll get to know him better. So, over the years, over the 80 years of Westminster, every now and then the question has come up, should we forget the language requirements? And, there will be mounting pressure. Say, students are saying, oh boy, I can't think about Greek and Hebrew. I think I'll go somewhere else or whatever, and saying, should we drop this? And so the faculty gets together and they bat the idea around, and I don't know how many times this has happened. Maybe it's only been once or twice. Maybe it's been more than that. But every time they have come down and said, no, it's really important. Church leaders need to be able to read the Bible in Greek and Hebrew. So we're going to keep the requirement. Now, in the MA program, you don't have to learn Greek and Hebrew. But in the MAR and the MDiv, you do. And, of course, I'm completely biased, but I think it's a good decision. So, anyway, that's my answer to why learn Greek and Hebrew. Why is it important?